Hey guys, thanks for joining me again if you're returning. And if you're new here, my name is Sara. I'm a domestic thriller author, or really just a thriller author, but what I have out so far is a domestic thriller series. My current work in progress is book 3 of my Love and Lie series. I will put in the description a link to my website where you can check out my books if you're interested in seeing what I write. I am newer to YouTube and just love to connect with readers and authors. I have a pretty active Instagram, so I will link below in the description. Would love it if we could connect over there. Anyway, today I'm just going to talk about the 4 steps to writing a novel. It seems like more and more frequently as people realize I've written and actually published a couple books, people are asking me like, how did you get started? And I did one video about how to write, like where to start, but as far as actually writing a full-length novel, I have still had a few questions about that. And somebody just asked me the other day if I had like some tips or steps, I guess. So I have a little note right here because I did actually sit down and say, what are the steps that I take? What have I done in order? In the past, I did have projects that I would like not finish. So yeah, this is what I've done to actually do projects that I finished. Number 1, so keep in mind this is how to write a novel for beginners, but obviously if you've just been like scrabbling around and feel like you're treading water, this might be a video for you too. But number 1, ideas, brainstorming. You need to pick an idea that you're motivated to write about right now. So you're going to come up with some ideas. Most people have multiple ideas when they're brainstorming, but you're going to continue to brainstorm on each of those ideas until you get one that you feel really passionate about writing about right now. That's a tongue twister. That's what you're going to work on writing right now. Because the thing is, if you are really passionate about something, but you put it aside because you're like, oh, people would want to read this more, I personally feel like you are not going to finish writing if you're not passionate about it. Now, some individuals who want to make a living writing as an indie author will do something called writing to market. But in my opinion, if you're just a beginner being like, how could I sit down and start writing a book? That is not the thing I would talk about, I guess. So that's number 1. Number 2. Oh, also part of number 1, as you're brainstorming and deciding on what idea, you're going to decide on a plot, some of your characters, and the scene. So where is your story going to take place? When is your story going to take place? And what is the general kind of idea behind it? What kind of characters you'll have, especially your main characters. You really want to think about who they are. So you could make this as elaborate as you want. There are numerous books, and yeah, I could talk about all those books. There's Save the Cat, but there's also just other books about structuring your novels and how to do that. You can read those books, you can Google and look online, but essentially the amount of details you have is up to you. I usually have a very brief idea of what my character is like on paper, but in my head I kind of know them. So I don't do a lot of elaborate writing about character stuff. Some people have like character sheets that outline everything, have the character's history, and do a lot of work. Now for me, characterization comes kind of naturally for most characters. I feel like I'm very in tune with that aspect. So for me, that is not a difficult point. If it's something you would struggle with, if you're not good at putting yourself in other people's shoes or thinking how other people would think, you are probably going to want to do more pre-work on your characters. You can also always go back and do some of that work later. So, like I said, you do as much or as little as you want to kind of get started on that. Number 2, so you know what your story is going to be about, you know who your characters are, you know where it's going to take place, you have a general idea of your book. You could describe to somebody else what your book would be about. You're going to start outlining. That's number 2. This again is as much or as little as you want. Some people don't outline at all. So like I said, if you are someone that is, it's called a pantser, doesn't outline, please don't come at me in the comments saying you don't have to outline. I know that. But for people who are like, how do I write a novel? If they're not just a sit down and write type person, outlining could really help them. Now,
I haven't always done outlines myself, and even now I feel like my outlines are far more brief and like they're just very, very simple compared to a lot of people's I know. I am working on outlining in more detail because I think it helps me write clearer and faster and have cleaner drafts. That probably doesn't apply to everyone, but I do think that applies to people who are struggling or questioning, like, how do I do this, or what's my next step? What do I do? What am I doing wrong? Why am I not getting anywhere? So yeah, you're gonna outline your story. You could have just like a brief outline, little plot points. You can look online for beat sheets. The Save the Cat also will help you. Just like looking at the different parts of a story, or you can do that in as much detail as you want, or as little as detail. I think that's what people kind of, they hear so much advice. Do this, outline, don't outline, just sit down and write. You know, come up with all this beforehand. The thing is, do whatever works for you. If you're trying to sit down and write and that's not working, try something else. If you wrote an outline and that's not working, put it aside and just try to sit down and write. See where it takes you. Writing is very just open and free to do whatever works for you. So number 3, you're gonna write draft 1. Obviously, you have to have a draft. So some people predetermine how long their book should be. I kind of have a set goal in my mind because I tend to be a very straight and to the point writer. So if I don't have like a goal for words, I tend to underwrite. And a lot of people, I think, have the actual opposite problem, but for them, they can edit that stuff out later, so it's fine. Just write until your story's done. You can fix the length. You can fix those aspects when you're editing. Now, some people will tell you don't edit while you're writing. Some people will tell you, edit periodically while you're writing. I say do whatever helps you move forward. For me, it's better if I don't really edit while I'm writing, unless, like I catch like a brief thing or I have to fix something in order to progress the story. But like, I don't write a chapter, then go back and edit that chapter and then write the next. I just don't do that way. Sometimes I'll reread the previous chapter because I'm thinking, I don't know where I'm going here and I think I got off track, and I will reread and kind of fix that just so I can get back on track. Now, some people will do that regularly. That's just part of their process. Other people will just write the whole thing out, whatever the mess may be. So it really depends on what kind of writer you are. For me, I write a fairly clean first draft, mostly because I use an outline and I don't feel the need to edit while I'm writing the first draft. I save that for afterwards. But again, this is a do what works for you. So that means in step 4 is obviously editing. And this is, wow, editing is it's a huge part of the process. For me, it's like the least enjoyable, but it is a necessary part of the process. You're gonna need to do self-edits. Of course, you're gonna need to do professional edits and hire somebody later, or have somebody that does that edit the book for you after, but you need to do self-edits first. So once I have my draft, I do a read through just for the big picture. The plot holes, does this make sense? Did I leave out some essential part? Is this does the story making sense? Did I get from point A to point B? And are there any gaps? Just the big picture. So that's my first part of my edit. Then the next is line editing. So that's for wording. Did I tell this part in a way that makes sense? Did I tell this part in the best way I possibly could? And obviously, are there any errors? Did I, write things grammatically correct? Did I word this the best way? Did I use the same word too many times in a row? Did I stay in the same point of view? And so on. And then the last step of editing, and keep in mind those steps can be multiple times. You may have to go through, or you most likely will have to go through them multiple times. But those are the breaking it down from the big to the little. And then the little one is the proofreading, and that's for typos and errors, somebody's name wrong, just things like that. So those are all the steps to write a novel. Does that get you published or take you to any other level? No, that doesn't tell you what to do with the novel when you're done. That just takes you from the how do I start with a blank piece of paper to how do I end up with a finished novel. Those are my 4 steps, and I know that they're fairly straightforward, and I don't know, I feel like they're kind of common sense, but sometimes when you're sitting here overwhelmed, like where do I begin, you kind of need somebody to say, hey, these are the steps I could do. And Also, I feel like just hearing the just do what works for you is something writers do not hear enough. Like, people have very strong opinions about what works and what doesn't, and they tend to focus on those rather than, you know, I get everyone's creative process is entirely different. So anyway, I'm gonna keep this video nice and short. Sorry, somebody just shut a door somewhere in my house. And yeah, thanks for watching. And also, I would love it if you would hit subscribe, the like button, and the notifications, all that good stuff. Bye.